I have been curious lately to challenge that paradigm and see whether it's actually possible to record something that has the immediacy of a lived experience. Like, do we have the capacity to rhapsodize about what's happening in real time without the kind of self-consciousness that accompanies the awareness that one is being recorded, right? For the awareness of being seen, the awareness of being recorded immediately like forces you into a kind of response to being sized up by an observer. But then you're performing for the observer. What is more interesting is whether we have the capacity to unfold dynamically, right? To have a ostensibly fresh experience with a complete absence of self-consciousness to the fact that one is being recorded. That would be an authentic expression, right? And so sometimes in the midst of an altered state, one might decide to start recording and then ask oneself whether one is perhaps too uninhibited to record what one is thinking about. You know, in other words, my self-inhibitory processes have been shut off, and perhaps I might say something I might come to regret, like a drunk person that's like, oh my God, yeah, I'm so drunk, I'm going to say something inappropriate.
Oh, no, it's not like that. I mean, for me, it's not like that.
Yeah.
I mean, your brain is you surf your brain much better than I do. You know, I keep falling in the water, I get hit by the waves.
Yeah.
You kind of surf your waves much better, much skillful than I think, thought-wise, notion-wise, and thought processing-wise, so to speak. But I think I could keep a track on my thought as well. Like, I make sense.
You do it very well
when I speak. But
well, one of the reasons I like
what I hate, when I absolutely hate, like I'm about to say, I'm telling something to a person. I'm really high and I'm telling something, really excited about it, and I keep talking about it and I keep expanding and keep referencing, and then I'm like, wait, oh shit, I forgot what I wanted to initially tell you about. You know? I fucking hate that. And then like an hour passes and I'm like, hey, you know, I remember what I wanted to tell you about.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Really?
Well, because what you're describing is the experience of losing your train of thought, and in the midst of an exuberant moment, a sort of confessional download, you lose yourself in the experience of speaking from the heart because you're responding dynamically to what's happening, and you're just like on a fucking train of thought. You're like riding that butterfly effect in thought, and everything is fucking coming together, and understand. To understand is to perceive patterns, as Isaiah Berlin said. And so you're fucking perceiving patterns, and you're fucking surfing, and you're so caught up in it that your entire enterprise is caught up in the frontier of the moment, and before you know it, you fucking wipe out from the wave. You forgot what the initial fucking idea was. And that can sometimes happen in a moment of exuberance, and that's very different than, you know, allowing yourself to have the moment, allowing yourself to forget your train of thought and whatever, and then later, you know, trust that the insight will come back, and it'll come back when you're in a less manic state, and you'll be able to process it and reflect upon it, and then in a kind of afterglow, string your thoughts together again. But that's a different thing. You know, going back to what we were originally trying to do with this recording is like, well, is it possible to just turn it on in the frenzy of ideation? You know, can you record yourself and lose your train of thought, and in spite of that, continue to expose yourself nakedly?
Well, that's what.
I mean, that's what Joe Rogan does on his podcast,
and that's what you are doing right now.
Yeah,
because you still are recording, right? Yeah. So you, yeah.
That's Wow.
No, it's great. That's. I mean, actually, I was one of our first times when we were hanging out, and you were telling me about this rule of yours. I said,
yeah,
you know, it's maybe it wouldn't harm if you would record yourself while high, because it's not like you're gonna upload it while you're high. You know, you can later on, sober-minded, so to speak, you know, take a look on that recording and then judge later upon it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, that's the question. The question is whether whether
Better.
how about this? The question is whether a sufficiently uninhibited conversation, a real conversation, a conversation with both of our defenses cast aside, a naked exchange, right, is something that can ever be publicly shared, right? Can you actually turn on the recorder and turn off your self-censorship? You know, because you're always to a certain degree performing for another person. Mm-hmm. You're always to a certain degree sort of accommodating yourself based on nonverbal cues and feedback. You know, to be an adaptable citizen, it means to be socialized into place. It means to be acutely aware of the presence of others, even those you don't know, people that are in the periphery, people that are in the background, people on the other side of this camera. But the desire for an authentically open and tender exchange, an exchange of play, an exchange of like uninhibited an uninhibited surrender, whereby you laugh, you cry, you share deep insights, and then you forget what the fuck you were talking about, and then you get distracted, and then you come back into focus, and then you meander through the manic geometries of associational thinking, like in a real conversation, right? A real conversation experienced with romantic abandon doesn't have to follow one train of thought, doesn't have to stay on a topic. It can meander, right? The art of conversation is meandering. It's taking the road less traveled by, but that never gets captured. That never gets recorded. You never really allow for the real-time transcription of that kind of looseness. You know, it's like we all button our pants before we stand in front of the other, of the camera, of the witnessing consciousnesses, and say, oh yeah, let's stay on topic. What are we talking about? I'm standing straight, you know?
Sometimes I forget.
Like, can talking be like dancing? Can talking be like dancing? In fact, can talking be like jazz? Right? Not just music, but jazz. Fully improvised, you know? Can you leap from different musical styles? You know, can you play jazz even with jazz, right? Like that kind of conversation, you know, in the hopes that eventually it will cohere into something meaningful, because human beings are sense-making and meaning-making creatures. So in the end, we'll always craft a story about what we talked about. But can the actual lived experience of what we talked about feel like just surfing, you know, again, a butterfly effect in thought and the manic geometries of associational thinking, a kind of mental gymnastic or kind of magic carpet ride? You know, you don't want to just move up, down, and side to side. You want to like move inside that fucking experience. Like I actually feel the real uninhibited conversation should be like hurling yourself into the present moment without knowing what's going to happen. It's a little bit like that sport zorbing. You familiar with zorbing?
No.
So zorbing was made popular. It's an extreme sport made popular in places like New Zealand and maybe Interlaken, Switzerland. But zorbing involves the construction of a plastic and spherical inflatable ball, basically, like an inflatable sphere. And it's got a chamber inside that you can crawl into. And they fill that chamber with water and soap. And human beings enter the chamber of this transparent inflatable sphere, and then they get hurled off mountains. But you're inside this womb with a view. You're inside the chamber, inside this inflatable transparent sphere. And so the world around you is now spinning, but you are in the center of the cyclone, in the center of that hurricane. You're having this perceptual experience that is now moving in any and all directions, but you're inside with plenty of lube, you know, soap and water, in a frictionless yet safe environment where you can just ride what happens perceptually, you know, and cognitively. And so a conversation should feel like that, like zorbing. And whether or not the dynamics of that can ever truly be captured, you know, it is an endless debate for people who want to like express themselves authentically. I want to just show people what it's like to be in a naked conversation. You know?
It's a very
astute observation.
Yeah. I like that's very illustrative metaphor. I love metaphors because that's a very easy way to understand another person.
Yeah, dude, I love metaphors.
Because the metaphor is like it's like a visualization. You know, it's like a telepathy, even. You know.
Totally.
I think so.
That's so well put, man. Visual metaphors are, akin to a form of telepathy. You know, because telepathy is to show someone what you mean, and a visual metaphor, right, is a tool used to convey meaning, but it's a picture. So a visual metaphor is a way of showing you what I mean. You know who's an expert of mapping the domains of psychedelic consciousness, the alien landscapes of psychedelic consciousness, the landscapes of ineffability, is Jamie Wheal. And Jamie Wheal is a brilliant, a dazzling, a mystical, rhapsodic, wordsmithing poet. And one of the things that he does beautifully when he's jamming and when he's riffing is he's coming up with these extended visual metaphors, and he's like surfing from one visual metaphor to another visual metaphor to another visual metaphor, you know, wow, using metaphors of like mountaineering and alpine climbing to describe like the sort of discipline required to navigate altered states in a healthy manner. And he's genius, but again, he shows you what he means, and he does that using visual metaphor, deploying visual metaphors to enhance the accuracy of our languaging, the resolution of our languaging. Beautiful
you
stuff.
Do that pretty well as well.
I think we do it together, man. That's why we enjoy these conversations. Anyway, what did this start? What was I talking about in the beginning of this video? Because maybe we can close it. There was something that this video started with.
I think it started with us talking about how to philosophize while being high, how to remain the
okay, yeah. This started. Oh, so it is sort of thematically connected to where we meandered to, but the beginning of this video was positing a question, or it was reflecting on how the world is constructed in a way that costs a bit of vigilance to engage with. Like engaging with the world means I have to pay attention to when the light is red and when the light is green, right? A degree of my cognitive faculties has to be deployed just to sort of be able to successfully engage with the world. Like, I need to have my wits about me and be in a certain degree of vigilance inside of baseline reality. And I would argue, in fact, that most people are anxious because the default zeitgeist of baseline reality asks for a lot of your awareness. Social media asks you to be scared and vigilant. The world asks you to be compliant. You've got to wear your seatbelt. You've got to stop when the light is red. You've got to go when the light is green. Otherwise, you're going to cause a fucking collision. And that kind of compliance is taxing to the mind. The mind, yes, needs stimulation, but can be oppressed by the rules embedded in the system in which it dwells. If there are too many rules, the mind is then cognitively constricted by trying to go through all the shit it's got to worry about at any given time. And what that does then is it robs our lived experience of the capacity to be open enough, surrendered enough to enjoy play, childlike play, romantic abandon, right? The endless summer, running around in the yard, rolling around in the fucking grass. Right? That's so rare. It's so rare for me, who enjoys contemplative introspection. I realize contemplative introspection costs a shitload of money. Costs all kinds of privilege. It's expensive. And I wish more of us had more access to that. Like unconstrained play space in our lived experience. Unconstrained play space filling the contents of awareness, without worry or fear or distraction or cognitive load.
Lots of those moments, you know, and there's gonna be the twilight of our lives. We're gonna have plenitude, infinite amount of infinite memorable moments.
Yes, we will, brother. Amen to that. How about that? So there you have it. 15 minutes of unedited freestyle conversation. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Share your thoughts in the comments if you can relate to the themes discussed therein.
The raw philosophy.
Imagine if this was like a podcast, like a raw podcast. From altered states to altered traits.